Hey guys, welcome. Another day, another case. Let's get right into it. I'm gonna paint a scene for you. Say you work at a crematory and one day your furnace breaks down. What do? Do you pause operations? Call authorities? Maybe the police? You'd probably do the right thing, right? You would stop all operation until you get the problem fixed, right? One man didn't. He kept taking bodies. But soon dozens would turn into hundreds, and instead of turning them into ash, he would pile them in sheds, on top of cars, dumped in the woods, scattered across the property like relics of the forgotten dead. A discovery so shocking, so disturbing, it would make us wonder, is it the dead we really have to worry about? This is the story of the Tri-State Crematory, a horror hidden in plain sight.
A large garage-type building was found today filled to the top with decomposing human remains. Authorities have found 5 more vaults in other buildings and other vaults in the woods. So far, 92 sets of remains have been recovered, only 16 of which have been identified. And some of these remains date back decades.
The Tri-State Crematory started as a small family-owned operation in Noble, Georgia. It quietly handled cremations and was very trusted among 3 states: Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama. But when Brent Marsh, the owner's son, took over, things would change. Not for the better. Marsh didn't have the proper licenses or training for this job, and that's pretty important to note considering he is cremating people's deceased loved ones. So no training and no licenses is crazy. When Brent's father, Ray Marsh, fell sick, he did call on Brent to save the family business. He wanted him to drop out of college in Tennessee, where he was playing college football, to come home and run the family business, the Tri-State Crematory. So Brent does this. He stops playing ball and he drops out of his college that he's attending in Tennessee, and he makes his way back home to Noble, Georgia. Now, the crematory and the family home were located on the same property, and they were pretty close in proximity too. In the years after Brent Marsh took control, a few funeral homes would notice some strange occurrences, to say the least. Families were coming back asking questions like, where's my loved one's ashes? What's the delay? Why is it taking so long? Some families reported the cremation smelled different, kind of like they were burnt improperly. Oftentimes, these concerns were brushed off by the funeral directors as they worked with Marsh for years. So they claimed they trusted Marsh and that the families had nothing to worry about, that their deceased loved ones were in good hands. But still, the rumor mill was turning, and workers at Tri-State Crematory did report some very strange things, like bodies just being left uncremated. And this would go on. Reports would be made. There was a report made to the EPA. There was a report made to the police from the person who comes in to refill the gas. He reported several bodies in the Tri-State Crematory property, and nothing was done about it.
I looked down and seen that there was bones and bodies just pushed up in a pile of debris.
It wasn't until February 2002 when police would get a call from a man walking his dog that he found remains. At first, he thought it could be animal bones, but with a closer look, it was a human skull. When police arrived to the scene, they were hoping maybe, just maybe, this was an isolated incident or an accident. They were even hoping it could be an old burial site. They did not want to believe their own eyes. But as they walked further into the woods, more bodies would be found. Bodies were everywhere, in broken down vans and sheds, some even left out in the open, in the sunlight. Some were barely covered with dirt and brush. They were just, it's abuse of a corpse, honestly. Like, it's sad what he did to these deceased people. Like, it's disgusting. Authorities would find not 1, not 10, not 50, 339 bodies were recovered. 339 families who thought they said goodbye. They realized they had never truly laid their loved ones to rest.
Far, 92 sets of remains have been recovered. only 16 of which have been identified, and some of these remains date back decades.
And I know we have found some mummified bodies that I would easily say are between 10 and 20 years old, as far as having been buried and then taken that long to get to this particular point.
Authorities say most of the remains are from older people who died of natural causes, but some of them were only infants.
We have found one definite set of infant remains, though, and there are also some other areas that we are examining right now that appear to have at least one small casket that would be an infant type that has fallen apart.
And the ones who received ashes? Many of them did not receive the remains of a loved one at all. Many of them didn't receive remains at all. Many of them received cement dust or wood chips. These people were given cement dust and or wood chips in place of their deceased loved one. What was supposed to be a place of rest and peace had become one of the most disturbing crime scenes in U.S. funeral history. And the man behind it all, he didn't run, he didn't hide, he stayed home like nothing ever happened. Like he didn't do anything wrong, like he had no reason to run or to hide in the first place. But after this discovery, all eyes turned to one person, Brent Marsh. The man who ran the crematory, the man who signed the paperwork, the man who looked these families in the eye. Brent Marsh. When the police questioned him, he didn't deny it. He admitted that the crematory's incinerator had stopped working. And instead of fixing it for years, he just let the problem get worse and worse and build up. He kept accepting bodies and letting them pile up until the problem was unmanageable. But why though? That was the question. That is what is on everyone's mind. Why? Why do you want a bunch of dead bodies on your property where you sleep? Not only the dead bodies, why would you want to lie to all these people? How is that harder than just fixing the furnace? Like, I don't understand. Like, was it laziness? Because if you ask me, it is so much harder to do everything he did, pile bodies, drag them out, dump them places, hide them, have all that stress on your back, than to just fix the problem at hand or even come clean after the first 10 bodies and be like, look, I got in over my head. But no, he didn't stop. He just waited till he got caught.
No logical explanation for having vaults filled with human remains and for having caskets dumped in the dirt and decaying and falling apart with more piled on top and more piled on top.
Brent's attorney argued that he suffered a mental break, that he was just so overwhelmed and under such intense pressure that he cracked.
Marsh didn't say a word today. His lawyer, McCracken Poston, spoke instead.
Brent never complained. He never whined. He never asked why.
They say he spiraled, that he felt trapped, that maybe in his own warped way, he thought hiding the bodies was somehow less painful than just telling the truth. But the people and the prosecutors did not buy this, not one bit. He accepted money for those cremations. He accepted money for his services, and he continued time and time again to accept money and not follow through with what he was supposed to do. That is fraud, plain and simple. And worst of all, he let these families believe that he was going to handle the hardest part of a death. He was going to take care of their loved one's body. In total, more than 300 families were affected by this. And most of them had no idea until they got a call from the FBI. The discovery at Tri-State Crematory wasn't just horrifying, it was criminal. And in March 2004, Brent Marsh was indicted on 787 counts, including theft by deception, abuse of a corpse, burial service fraud, and making false statements. Each count represented a life, a person, a family. Each count was detrimental to all the people who were affected by this person's bad decision making. Faced with overwhelming evidence and his confession, Marsh pleaded guilty to all 787 counts and would receive 12 years in prison and probation for the rest of his life. That felt like justice to some, but for others it wasn't nearly enough for the trauma and pain that they had to face for all of that. Some families never even received confirmation that their loved one was found.
It just brings up like a flood of images to my mind, like how that time went after they found out. And
Alan Murphy's grandmother's remains were never identified after her death in 2000.
you wonder, what could you have done as a family member to protect the body of your loved one?
Others had to exhume ashes that they thought were ashes, but weren't ashes at all. They were wood chips or cement dust or nothing at all. A class action lawsuit leading to millions of dollars in settlements, not just against Marsh, but also the funeral homes that used him as a service without verifying what was really happening and what was really going on.
Murphy is an attorney. He filed the first lawsuit against the Marsh family and ended up representing around 1,800 people in a federal class action suit naming the Marshes and the funeral homes that sent bodies here.
One of the depositions was a man who had been released from prison to die of AIDS at home, in a trailer. And the other one would be a judge from Chattanooga, or a partner in a law firm, or some of the wealthiest people.
After serving 12 years in prison, Brent Marsh was released in 2016, and since then he's kept a pretty low profile. No public statements, no public interviews. He kind of fell off the face of the earth. The Tri-State Crematory is no longer in operation. It has since been closed down, thankfully. In the aftermath of this Tri-State Crematory, Georgia and several other states have passed stricter laws and regulations on funeral homes and crematories. They need more regular inspections, and they do have stricter rules now. Which, it sucks that 339 bodies had to suffer for that to happen, but we're glad it happened. Although we're glad it happened, the change still came too late. They'll never get their loved ones back. Never get the ashes they were promised. And maybe that's the haunting part of all of this, is how it went unchecked for so long. In the end, this case wasn't just about crime, it was about trust and how fragile that trust becomes when no one is watching. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you found this case as haunting as I did, please feel free to share your comments down below and just let me know what you think. Thank you for spending time with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.